my favorite fish, because I'd probably like to stand up here and talk about Cisco, but since I work for the Odawa people, I think it's pretty important to talk about the fish that they would say is the most important fish to them. And I think if we could go back in time for, say, 5,000 or 6,000 years, the Odawa people would have always said that this was the most important fish to them. So I do feel good about coming here and talking about Adikameg. Any of the statistics that I show from catch are going to be from the 1836 waters, so from the seeded waters, and it's kind of the story that we all know. Harvest is down, so harvest is down in all 3 lakes in the seeded waters. The decline started kind of in Lake Huron a little earlier, but has been precipitous in Lake Michigan now. So the tribal fishery in Lake Michigan's at its lowest level since '81, since we've kept these numbers. And so, we got to start thinking about why. I don't know of another fish that can support this harvest. I think we talked about that last night. So what is happening with these fish? Here's another way to look at it. So we had this catch data that shows that there's a big decline. We have our modeling data that shows there's a decline in the population. It also shows that there's a decline in recruitment. And that recruitment precedes the decline in abundance, which makes pretty good sense to me. We have also seen this exact same trend in our assessment nets. So we see less and less, our catch per unit effort is lower and lower each year. So what the heck is going on out in the lake that's driving this change? And maybe even more important, like to managers, what are we going to do about it? So we're going to adjust harvest. We're going to change these expectations, or, go to our fishers and say, yeah, well, so that's how it used to be, but it won't be there. We're going to think about predation. We hear all the time from our fishers that lake trout are causing this issue. Are we just going to wait and see? And then we also hear from our fishers all the time, we need to be stocking fish. And maybe the answer is a group of these tools that we use, but maybe we need to understand why this is happening before we could even choose the tools. So what's going on in the lake that we could address to make it someplace that's a little bit better than it is now? So if we think that there's some sort of a bottleneck in recruitment, I tend to believe that there is. What life stage is it happening at? Is it these adult fish? Is that where the problem is? We have no place for these adult fish to grow and live. And it's not really been the area that I've done the most research on, but we've worked on it a little, and I've talked with Kevin a lot about it. It's kind of probably our topic of office conversation most often. So we have these models that set kind of catch limits, and we hardly ever get near those limits. So catch is not approaching these model limits. The age composition of the catch is expanding, and we have old fish in the catch. So, it leads me to think that fish that reach adulthood are at least doing okay. Maybe not as good as in sometimes, but still kind of doing okay. So I would argue that the real bottleneck is not in adult fish. So how about eggs or these really mysterious immature fish, the 6 months to 3-year-old fish? Currently, what I'd argue is we don't know enough to even say much about those fish. We seldom run into the immature fish. I'm not aware of much work that's being done on the eggs. So it's a big question mark, but there's currently nothing that I know of built in to really look and work on this area easily. But in this next area, there already is some infrastructure built, someplace that we could work, we have been working, and we could work more. So larval fish and fish that Kevin and I used to call juvenile fish, he's now calling post-larval fish. I'll probably screw those terms up, but these fish that are living, at least in our case, on the beach in their first 6 months of life. So probably since 5 or 6 years, we've been doing a Newston survey. We've done it a number of different ways. It's grown over years, so we have had years where we sampled a few locations a lot of times. We've had years where we've sampled a lot of locations a number of less times. I don't think we know the exact way to do this yet. But as we've gone on, and Kevin has recruited more and more agencies to be part of it, it has gotten to the point where we are starting to cover a larger part of the lake. We're starting to get maybe a picture. And it seems that we actually do see some real differences. So we see this 2015 year as the year that we caught the most larvae per tow. I should probably say our tows are maybe different than some that other folks have done. Ours are right on the beach. So oftentimes the shallow water person pulling the net will be within 2 meters of the beach. Maybe a foot of water, maybe a foot and a half. And we've just adjusted to that because that's where we found the most larvae over time. So we have this larval survey, and we've built a couple of little pilot programs on top of it. So we did a little bitty diet study in 2014. I think Steve Pothoven worked on this as well. And we looked at what's available for these fish to eat and what are they eating. So in our waters near Petoskey State Park, all there is to eat are some cyclopoids and some calanoids, and mostly that is what they ate. A little bit of switching to chironomids when these larvae got big, 21, 22 millimeters. Kind of a new thing that we've just recently found with some work with Wendy. I'll bring my Cisco back into it for just a second. None of our Cisco seem to ever switch over and feed in those chironomid. That's kind of the only diet thing that we've seen with Cisco. So I didn't think I could get all the way through a presentation without talking about Cisco. But there is this switch maybe to having chironomid be important at some point, and it kind of makes sense. At this point, their mouth parts are starting to kind of move towards the bottom, and maybe this is the beginning of their benthic orientation. So I'll go back. This was one site. We sampled it often throughout the year. In 2017, we had kind of a different idea. We'll do a lot of sites, but we won't do them nearly as often. Again, calanoids and cyclopoids are about all there was for these fish to eat at these sites. And calanoids and cyclopoids are what they ate. But these zopes were at really low abundance. And we've been thinking, are they at such low abundances that there is not enough for these fish to eat? And so we have this idea that Kevin came up with to try to think of how low is the abundance. So we have this cube. It's 90 feet on each side. We have a person down in the cube. And there's 2 chicken nuggets in this cube. And so you're trying to get these chicken nuggets that swim away from you, and you're hoping that Warner doesn't sneak into your area and get your chicken nugget before you do. So there really may not be enough encounter chances for these fish to make it through this stage. So, there really isn't much in the spring in Lake Michigan on the shore for these fish to eat. So then we get to this juvenile stage, or Donner's new term, the post-larval stage. And this is really kind of the assessment that Kevin was thinking would be the potential cheapest way to index recruitment. Is there a way with incredibly simple gear and low cost to figure out when we might have a first sign of a year class? So this is a survey that Kevin is really excited about. I'm really excited as well. I worked on it for the first time last year. It was a fun and interesting survey. Again, we're looking for these little fish when they first start to look like Lake Whitefish, maybe. I've been really pleased at the number of people who have wanted to join in and help with this. It's a humongous lake, and for a while I think Kevin was feeling like there wasn't enough help to get around the lake, but now it really is getting to the point where we have at least 2/3 of the lake getting sampled pretty regularly and pretty strenuously. So there is this sampling going on, and here's kind of catch per effort at all these sites. And again, The error bars are large, the uncertainty is pretty high, but this 2015 year class shows up again as a strong year class. And so we know that there's at least 3 or so more years before these fish would show up in the commercial catch. But we have this idea that maybe from a bottom trawl that 2015 was a strong year class. So is this an early place that we might be able to look at year class strength? It is maybe a place we could do so, and we could do so pretty inexpensively. So managers want to know, what can we do? As a tribal biologist, we have folks in the office every single day asking us, what are we going to do about whitefish? And oftentimes more than one person a day. So we need the information. We need to figure out what we can do, where are areas, and where are areas that we can afford to do. We have some of these surveys that are ongoing, so things that we can leverage those for cheaply. That's really great. Some other hypotheses will take some more infrastructure building before we can get going with them, but probably will be required to really figure out what this bottleneck is. And you know, I just would probably relate that we just had a whitefish workshop recently, and it was really great when I could go home and tell the tribal folks that a lot of people in the room were working on a fish that they thought was important. And for many of them, they related to me that was the first time that they had thought that this group of people was really working on a fish that they thought was important. And you know, I'm really happy about that. I'm really glad to be part of that.